Whether in relationships, work, or daily interactions, disrespect isn't always loud. It sneaks into everyday conversation. But today, I'm going to be giving you tools to shut it down effortlessly. Greetings everyone out there. As usual, I appreciate your time. Today I'm going to be talking about the top 10 ways to disarm disrespect. But before I unpack all of that, if you would kindly like, subscribe, or follow my channel, it helps me grow. It really does a lot for me. So without further ado, let's get started with number 1. Maintain composed body language. This is why it works. People subconsciously mirror body language. If you stay composed, they lose momentum. It signals confidence, making the disrespect inefficient. Imagine someone tries to provoke you in a meeting, maybe mock your suggestion. Instead of reacting emotionally, maintain a relaxed eye contact, an upright posture, and a calm facial expression. Disrespect thrives when you react. But what if you don't react? What if your body language alone made disrespect powerless? Your body speaks louder than words. Learn how to control it, and disrespect loses control over you. Body language is a silent weapon that can dismantle disrespect without a single word. Here are some advanced techniques that enhance your presence and command respect. Someone is disrespectful, slow your blink rate and tilt your head slightly. This conveys unimpressed detachment. It signals you're analyzing them, not reacting, forcing them to second guess their approach. Instead of showing emotion, hold a neutral expression with relaxed eyes and a slight nod. This denies them emotional validation and keeps you in control. Slow, purposeful movements, placing your hands down gently, adjusting posture smoothly. Show unshaken confidence. This makes attempts to intimidation feel ineffective. Lean back slightly instead of forward when confronted. This creates space and signals domination. It shows you're not emotionally engaged, making their disrespect feel pointless. A small knowing smirk can diffuse condescending remarks, signaling nice try, but I'm unfazed. This can redirect their awkwardness back to them without escalating. After a disrespectful comment, pause slightly before responding, maintaining a calm composure. This makes them feel rushed and overreactive, shifting power back to you. Mirror their posture without mocking them to create a subconscious discomfort. This forces them to reevaluate their own stance. Raising your chin slightly while maintaining a relaxed eyes creates an aura of quiet strength. It conveys self-assurance without aggression. Casually look away while they're speaking at key moments, signaling, I don't find this worth my energy. This invalidates their attempt to control you. Number 2, ask clarifying questions like, what do you mean by that? It forces people to reassess their words and backpedal. For example, someone makes a passive-aggressive remark, you ask them to explain. Make them rethink their choice of words. Why does this work? It forces them to explain, often make them backpedal or realize their own rudeness. It shifts the burden onto them rather than you taking offense. Clarifying questions are an excellent way to disarm disrespect because they force the other person to reassess their words, often making them realize their own negativity. The key is to stay calm and neutral and slightly inquisitive. This prevents escalation while shifting control of the conversation back to you. Let me give you another example. If someone makes a snide comment like, wow, you're always late, with a disrespectful tone, respond with, are you upset about something specific or just making an observation? Puts them in a position to explain themselves, often diffusing their hostility. Another powerful question is, what do you mean by that? This works well when someone uses sarcasm or passive-aggressive remarks, as it forces them to break their intended tone and clarify if this disrespect is more overt. You can use direct yet composed questions like, are you trying to be helpful, or is there another reason you said that? This challenges their intent without escalating the situation. Even something as simple as, would you say that to everyone or just me? Shifts the dynamic by making them reconsider their approach. The goal of clarification questions isn't to engage in conflict, but to strategically redirect the conversation, putting the responsibility on the disrespectful person to justify their behavior. When done right, their responses create a moment of self-reflection, often leaving them uncomfortable enough to backtrack or reconsider their tone. Number 4, use the power of silence. For example, let's say someone makes a disrespectful joke at your expense. Instead of reacting, you pause and say nothing. Simply look at them for a moment, then you return to the conversation as if it never happened. Why does this work? It creates awkwardness for them, not for you. Without a reaction, their attempt at disrespect falls flat. Silence is one one of the most underrated tools when handling disrespect. It shifts power without conflict and forces the other person to sit in their own words. When someone is disrespectful, they often expect an emotional reaction, whether it's defensiveness, frustration, or anger. Responding with silence disrupts their expectations and creates an uncomfortable void, making them question their own words. The absence of a response forces them to either reassess their approach or escalate. And in most cases, escalation without opposition makes them appear immature and unreasonable. Silence also conveys emotional control, showing that you are neither shaken nor bothered by their attempt to provoke you. This makes them feel powerless in their efforts to manipulate the conversation. In professional settings, a well-placed pause before responding to disrespect can make the other person second-guess their words, giving you the upper hand without confrontation. In personal interactions, silence can communicate disinterest in engaging with negativity, which often results in the other person backing down or shifting their tone. Furthermore, prolonged silence, especially paired with neutral, composed body language, turns the disrespectful person's actions into a spectacle, making their behavior seem awkward and ineffective. This psychological tactic works because people tend to mirror the energy in the conversation, and if you refuse to entertain hostility, they are basically left in a self-imposed echo chamber of negativity. Silence is not weakness. It's strategic power, powerful, and completely within your control. Number 5, redirect with humor. Let me give you an example. Someone says, "Wow, you're terrible at this." Instead of letting it sting, you say, "Yeah, it's actually a skill to be this bad," with a confident chuckle. Why does this work? Because humor throws off their intent, making the insult ineffective. It keeps you in control. You're framing the interaction positively. Redirecting disrespect with humor is a subtle yet highly effective power move because it shifts the energy of the conversation without escalating the negativity. When someone makes a rude comment, their goal is to often provoke a reaction, either anger, defensiveness, or discomfort. But responding with humor throws off their intent, making their remark seem insignificant rather than impactful. For example, if someone says, "Wow, that's the dumbest idea I've heard," instead of reacting emotionally, you could just grin and say, "I know, right? I'm just out here trying to set new records at being bad with bad ideas." This instantly reframes the exchange, removing the weight of their insult while showing you're unfazed. The brilliance of humor is that it strips the disrespectful person of control. If they were hoping to intimidate or put you down, your lighthearted response disarms their aggression, and it even makes them appear overly serious or mean-spirited. Additionally, humor signals confidence. It shows you are secure enough to not take petty remarks personally, which can often make the other person reconsider their approach. The key is to use humor strategically, not in a way that mocks or antagonizes, but in a way that redirects tension into absurdity, making the insult irrelevant. Over time, the method teaches people that trying to be disrespectful towards you is pointless because you won't engage in negativity. Mastering this technique allows you to turn almost any hostile remark into an opportunity to showcase strength, intelligence, and emotional control. Number 6, call it out directly but calmly. Let me give you an example. A coworker belittles your idea in a meeting. Instead of reacting emotionally, you say, "That was unnecessary," in a neutral tone, without anger. Why does this work? It addresses the behavior without escalating. It shows self-assurance and it sets boundaries. Calling out disrespect calmly and directly is one of the most powerful ways to assert boundaries without escalating conflict. The key is to stay composed, use neutral language, and avoid emotional reactions that could fuel the other person's behavior. Let me give you another example. If a coworker undermines your idea in a meeting, instead of getting defensive and arguing, you could just be like, "That was unnecessary," or "I'd appreciate constructive feedback." Instead, this method exposes their behavior without engaging in negativity, making them aware of their actions while maintaining your professionalism. Calmly calling out shifts the dynamic. You're addressing the issue without hostility, forcing the other person to either justify themselves or adjust their tone. People who rely on disrespect often expect passive acceptance or emotional reactions. So when you confront it with collected confidence, they're basically left without an easy way to continue their behavior over time, right? This approach sets a clear precedent. You do not tolerate disrespect, and you command respect without needing to demand it. Number 7, avoid justifying yourself. Let me give you an example. You tell someone about a decision you made, and they say, "That's a stupid idea." Instead of explaining why it's not, you should say, "I don't need approval from this or from you," and move on. down. Why does that work? Because justifying gives power away. You don't need to prove anything to people being disrespectful to you. It ends the conversation instead of feeding their negativity. Avoiding the urge to justify yourself is a silent but powerful way to disarm disrespect, because it removes the other person's control over the conversation. When someone questions your choices or belittles you, they often expect you to defend yourself, which keeps the conversation on their terms. But by responding with confidence and certainty rather than explanations, you signal that their validation isn't required. For example, if someone says, "That's a ridiculous idea," instead of explaining why it's not, you calmly reply, "I'm confident in it," and move on. That shifts the power dynamic instead of engaging in unnecessary debate. You demonstrate that their opinion doesn't dictate your actions, and over time, people will realize that disrespecting you leads nowhere, and they either adjust their tone or lose interest in trying to challenge you. Confidence shuts down negativity far more effectively than explanations do. Number 8, use assertive statements. For an example, a family member keeps mocking you and making dismissive remarks about your career choice. Instead of engaging in a debate, you say, "I won't engage in disrespect." Why does this work? Because it's short, clear, and unshakable. It shuts down further negativity without argument. Using assertive statements is one of the most effective ways to disarm disrespect, because it sets clear boundaries without aggression or defensiveness. Assertiveness is about stating your position with confidence and clarity, which immediately signals that you will not tolerate being disrespected. When someone tries to undermine or dismiss you, responding with a firm yet calm statement like, "I won't engage in disrespect," or "That comment was unnecessary," it stops the negativity in its tracks. It forces the other person to acknowledge your stance without giving them room to escalate. Unlike defensive or apologetic responses, assertive statements remove power from the disrespectful person because they show that you are in control of the conversation. This method assures the disrespect is met with certainty rather than emotion, making it clear that you stand by your values without needing validation. Over time, people will learn that attempting to provoke you will lead nowhere, and they adjust their behavior accordingly. Number 9, don't get dragged into emotional chaos. For example, someone raises their voice at you in an argumentative tone, expecting you to match their energy, but instead you lower yours. Stand measured and calm. Why does this work? It deflates their emotional intensity. They expect a fight, but get controlled silence. It makes them feel out of place, shifting the power dynamic. Getting dragged into emotional chaos when dealing with a disrespectful person plays right into the other person's hands. They want a reaction, and if you give them one, you'll already lose the control. Staying calm and detached strips them of their ability to manipulate your emotions. When someone raises their voice, mocks you, or tries to bait you into an argument, responding with steady, measured energy shifts the power dynamic. Instead of engaging in their negativity, you dictate the tone of the conversation, one of control, clarity, and rationality. Emotional chaos thrives on impulse and reaction, but if you choose composure, the disrespect loses its impact, and the instigator is left feeling powerless. Over time, maintaining calm authority teaches people that disrespect won't get a rise out of you, making them less likely to try it again. Last but not least, number 10, flip the power dynamic with questions. Example, someone humiliates you in public, thinking it's funny. Instead of reacting, you ask them, "Why would you say that?" calmly. Why does this work? It puts them on the spot, forcing reflection. It makes them realize the awkwardness of their comment. Flipping the power dynamic with questions is a strategic way to shift control from the disrespectful person back to you, without confrontation and without drama. When someone makes a rude remark, they usually expect either silence, defensiveness, or anger, but asking a direct question forces them to justify their words, often making them stumble. If someone says, "You really don't know what you're talking about," instead of reacting emotionally, respond with, "What makes you say that?" It puts them in a position where they have to explain themselves. This disrupts their rhythm, often exposing their lack of real reasoning. Questions instance, like, is there a reason why you're speaking to me like that? Or would you say that to anyone else? It challenges their behavior without escalating the situation, making them self-conscious about their words. The key is to stay composed and deliver the question neutrally. This removes their ability to control the interaction and forces them into a self-reflection. Over time, this method teaches people that disrespect leads to uncomfortable scrutiny.